charity event. This is GB News across the UK on TV, in your car on digital radio and on your smart speaker by saying play GB News. Now it's time for those headliners.
Hello and welcome to Headliners. Hope you're all well. I'm Nick Dixon and I'll be taking you through tomorrow's top stories in a light-hearted way. And I'm joined tonight by the thinking man's gammon. It's Paul Cox. There he is. And more prosciutto, our favourite new person on Headliners. It's Nicholas DeSanto. I went with prosciutto, Nicholas, because I believe are you half Italian, half Iranian, roughly?
Yeah, and I like prosciutto.
Right, I knew you would. Bobby, if you're half Italian, half Iranian, does that mean one half of you loves ham and the other half is not allowed to eat it?
No, I'm not a practicing Muslim.
OK.
I'm not a Muslim at all, to be honest.
OK, well, that got weird. I thought it was going to be a good joke, but I mean, 99% of the country is Muslim, so you ruined my joke. But Paul, you look great tonight, by the way, guys. I was just saying you look like the Young Republicans convention. You could both easily be like speechwriters for Trump. Look at that. Look at Paul. Come on. That's me. Don't go to me. Go to Nicholas. There you go. Look at that. Trump's new speechwriters feeding in alt-right ideas in an acceptable way.
I'm taking it as a compliment.
Yeah, Nicholas, I said that. Nicholas was like, yeah, it's great. All right, let's have a quick look at the front pages then. So the Times has baby deaths cover-up investigated by police. We'll be talking about that in a moment. The Guardian, escape of terror suspect prompts prison cuts row. The Eye, fugitive terror suspects escape investigated as possible prison inside job. The Financial Times, pensions poised for fresh jump as triple lock matches wage growth. The Daily Mail, warring royal brothers still 100 miles apart. And the Daily Star, Doddy didn't become a ghost, did he? Which is about the ghost of Ken Dodd, of course. And those are your front pages. Let's start with this fairly horrific story in the Times, Paul.
Yeah, another one. Baby deaths cover-up investigated by police. So this is up to 1,700 families affected by hospitals failing. This is another harrowing story, like you said, on our horizon, this time in Nottingham. And the police are now investigating into baby deaths and injuries at Nottingham University Hospitals Trust. Essentially, there are 1,700 affected families. They are worried about the poor care that their family and their children were having at the time. There were a number of deaths, and the investigations, it would seem, were very, very poor and lacking.
Which is becoming a bit of a theme now, isn't it? I mean, Nicholas, am I just doing this job so I notice the news, or is our country just collapsing in every regard?
Well, you know, from NHS, that some people repute to be the envy of the world, you know, unless you've seen a hospital in Western Europe. We had a very similar sad story in mid-August as Lucy Letby was tried and convicted of having killed 7 babies in Cheshire, the NHS nurse. And I think the common link between these two stories is, again, lack of investigation or top levels of management not taking the signal seriously, trying to either push it under the carpet, just think of their own position, and not heeding the signals which were there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why does that happen? Just bureaucracy?
Well, I mean, you know, not working in hospitals myself, but there are going to be a number of facets in there, multiple facets, nuances, extremely busy places, lots going on. What we'd like to all believe is that there are very well-honed systems and controls in place to prevent anything like this from happening. We all accept that mistakes happen and therefore there will be problems. But again, this is 1,700 families, which alludes to the fact there's 1,700 children that could have been injured or possibly killed in the care of Nottingham University Trust.
Yeah, shocking. I'm not sure anyone thinks of the phrase well-honed systems when it comes to the NHS anymore. But yeah, point taken. What about the Eye, Nicholas?
Well, this is the gripping story of today and yesterday. Fugitive terror suspects escape investigated as possible prison inside job. So we know this person, Daniel Khalifa, who escaped Wandsworth prison under a food supply truck. Apparently, he was awaiting trial on terror charges. Some reports say he was passing on information to a hostile government, possibly Iran. So now questions have been raised as to how he was allowed to work in the so-called weak link of the prison, which is the kitchen. which was effectively controlled by civilians, not by prison personnel. He was dressed as a chef, told everybody he was downloading or offloading food into the truck or onto the truck, and then that's how he disappeared. Now officials are saying that he might even have left the UK, warning anybody who is supporting him outside that they might be committing egregious crimes, and most importantly, investigating what sort of help he had, presumably inside the prison, whether it was from fellow prisoners or officials.
Yeah, exactly. And apparently there's been no sightings. There's been loads of people calling into the police. What do you think, Paul? Just another example of our crumbling infrastructure, or what?
Well, there's a couple of things going on. It was a Category B prison, which is more relaxed. It's not Category A, which is interesting because you'd imagine that a suspected terrorist may be in a Cat A. I don't quite know how that works. That would just be my assumption. Like Nick says, you know, working in the kitchen is probably considered a privilege within the prison, and being asked to load the lorry, I mean, this is like something from porridge almost, isn't it? But one thing that is interesting here is we're now saying that his success is being linked to how well he was trained as a British soldier. Now that he appears to have got away and nobody's been able to find him so far, we're almost congratulating ourselves for training him to be so good. I'm not sure that's quite the case here. It's fascinating that he's not only been able to get out yesterday morning, I think about 10 to 7 or 10 to 8, something like that, early in the morning. He's not only been able to get out of the prison, he's been able to disappear entirely. And now they're talking about him getting out of the country.
Yeah. It's
If you plan to get out of the country that quickly, you couldn't do.
Right. No, especially if you're going into France or somewhere with those delays. But yeah, I mean, it's Ted Bundy levels of escapism, isn't it? Did you ever watch that Ted Bundy documentary and he just escaped from 2 prisons?
Yes.
Like, is anyone watching the serial killer?
Just wandered out.
Madness. All right, what have the Mail got, Paul?
Well, the Mail cover our beloved Queen's and the year of her passing. So Queen Elizabeth II passed a year ago tomorrow, or if you're reading this tomorrow, today.
Or even watching this.
Or watching it. If you're reading it, that's incredible. So, yeah, and full of all the sort of splendour and stuff you'd expect the Mail to bring to this particular story. I think, interestingly, whilst this doesn't cover it particularly well, I think King Charles has managed the last year fairly well. The reason I say that is because you've barely noticed him. Things haven't changed dramatically. He's just kept that continuity going. But what hasn't changed, and what many of us hoped would have changed, is that the brothers, the princes, are still warring. And the big headline here is warring royal brothers still 100 miles apart, which is metaphorical, of course, because they are thousands of miles apart, actually, geographically. However...
Which is a lot further apart, isn't it?
It's a lot longer than the 100 miles.
So you could have said emotionally it's millions of miles, maybe,
yeah,
light
exactly.
years.
Well, and it's really sad to see. I know families have these problems. You know, lots of families do. However, you can't help but feel that Harry's gone around certain things particularly badly. It's difficult to see where William has done too much wrong here.
I think Harry hasn't handled things perfectly. It's quite a safe position on GBNews. That's how I put it. That is pretty much half our story.
Have many fans around here.
Not really. But how do you feel about this, Nicholas? I mean, it's a year on since our beloved Queen's death, as Paul says. I can't believe it's been a year. We were all here talking about Queen at length, wearing black and stuff. Were you here at that time?
Yes, I was, yeah.
OK, yeah, and it is amazing. I suppose you get older, time moves quicker. One little anecdote, I was watching an interview with Chris Eubank Sr. He said something interesting. He said the honour of his life was being represented by invited by the Queen to this an event. And he said that was the honour of his life because he'd always tried to emulate the Queen. And he said something really interesting. He said, everyone thinks I'm an oddball, but actually I was doing what you were supposed to do. So for someone like him, he looked to the Queen as like the way you're supposed to comport yourself. And actually that was what she was. And that actually sounds like a sort of, you know, eccentric idea now, but that's what we're all supposed to be doing. Anyway, little anecdote. What do you think, Nicholas?
Well, I think King Charles has big shoes to fill. Obviously, Queen Elizabeth was a record-breaking queen in terms of the monarchy, very popular. People still need time to warm up to the new king, and there are some concerns maybe for people in our camp in terms of his views towards the environmental...
Nicholas, when we say our camp, we're just simply a neutral channel regulated by Ofcom, but I know what you mean. You mean you and Paul and your young Republican gammon fest.
Young Republicans over
Republicans, gammons,
I'm a
small C conservatives in the UK.
But I know what you mean, the climate agenda, the wokeness.
Yeah, there's skepticism over that, but let's give him time.
Absolutely. OK, well, let's have a quick look at the Star, which is the best way to look at the Star, is quite quickly, generally, Nicholas. We've got Ken Dodd.
Sir Ken Dodd, comedy legend. I have to admit, I'm not very familiar with his work, mea culpa, but apparently his wife believes that his spirit is haunting their marital house in Liverpool. This is kind of a sweet story, if you like, because she's not complaining. Lady Anne, she says, she was his wife for 40 years, and she says, yes, everything happens in this house, doors open, close, no apparent reason, and she wants him actually to stay.
Yeah. He was known for incredibly long shows and never leaving the stage. Paul, he wouldn't even leave this astral plane. One quick anecdote about Ken Dodd. He used to come in the bookshop where I worked and buy joke books, which I always thought was a bit odd for a comedian. We wouldn't do that now in this generation of comedians, but back then you could just read your jokes out of a book. It was the way you told them. Very briefly, Paul, any thoughts on this?
Well, people don't write joke books anymore, for a start, so there aren't any to buy. Look, this is, like Nick said, this is kind of a nice story, you know. If she believes this is Doddy walking around her house, then and it gives her comfort, I don't have any issue with that.
All right. Not that controversial there, but that's it for part one. But coming up, Humza Yousaf's genius plan for police reform, WhatsApp versus the UK government, and, of course, human kidneys grown in pigs. See you in 2 minutes.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Yo.
Welcome back to Headliners. I'm still Nick Dixon and still here with Paul Cox and Nicholas DeSanto, the future Republican senators. There they are. Let's get back into it with the Independent. And the anti-terror programme, Prevent, will now focus on actual terrorists rather than members of the House of Lords. What an interesting idea, Paul.
Incredible idea, yeah. So Prevent reforms will help train people to spot genuine radicalisation. So a major review found that Prevent was out of kilter with the rest of the counter-terrorism system and the UK terrorism threat picture. And I think it's always important to say at this point when we talk about counter-terrorism, Prevent, of course, being the part of the system that is, of course, trying to prevent any people becoming radicalised, that our security services do a flipping good job is a very valid point to say, because sometimes it's very difficult to mix up the political aspect of anti-terrorism and the actual job of anti-terrorism. And I think they do a very good job. And what happens sometimes is it becomes politicised if things don't go quite right. But there's so much more prevented than ever takes place. And we all sort of, I think, add a certain amount, owe a certain amount of depth to that.
That's fair. I mean, yeah, there's a disturbing amount of potential terrorists out there that are being thwarted every day without us having to think about it because we'd never sleep. I see your point. But yeah, then it became very politicised, and Jacob Rees-Mogg was cited as some sort of gateway to extremism, as was Shakespeare, I believe, in one of the documents. Yes. And Douglas Murray, who's tweeted or posted on X and said it's absurd that he was linked with extremism when his book, Strange Death of Europe, was a bestseller, #1 bestseller, not a fringe text. Nicholas, what do you think?
Exactly. I mean, I agree with Paul. Security forces may have done a good job in terms of foiling plots, catching the terrorists. But the idea behind Prevent is, as the name suggests, to prevent them from being radicalized. And in these recommendations that we have seen to the program, the idea behind it, or at least some of these recommendations that the government has now embraced, most importantly, the rule of ideology or Islamist ideology in turning people towards terrorism. In other words, let's call a spade, rather than just vaguely talking about, backgrounds, poor backgrounds, or, historical wrongs and colonialism and all these popular talking points with the left.
Do you think this was just a mistake or deliberate? Because it says here there was a failure by those working on Prevent to properly understand the nature of ideology in Islamist radicalisation. I was like, was that a mistake, or was that a sort of, they'd just been infected by leftist ideology, so they wanted to focus on the right, rather than the tricky issue of Islamic terrorism? That's what it seemed like to me.
Well, this is what I talk about. That's why I was talking about the politicisation of it and the optics of it, because what we end up hearing about, for some balance reason that's never really been correctly explained to me, is we will hear about the far right more than we'll hear about radical Islamists, because it's politically easier to say. And the trouble with that is it just masks the fact that this is real world stuff. And you can't just pussyfoot around with this stuff. You have to hit it straight on, call a spade, and do exactly that.
Absolutely. The only other thing I'd add, though, is just lastly, this is Suella Braverman saying this, and I feel like virtually every day we do a story where Suella Braverman speaks out and says that my department must do X or Prevent must do Y, and nothing ever happens. No. So I hope it actually happens. That's all I'm going to say. Let's do the Times, and Humza Yousaf has a new plan to help the police just stop investigating crimes, Nicholas.
Yeah, a controversy from Scotland. So Scottish First Minister is basically piloting this plan for North East Scotland, where certain kinds of crimes will not be investigated if they deem that there's no continuing risk or threat or harm and no proportionate lines of inquiry to investigate. Of course, the Conservatives of Scotland are decrying this as, open season for criminals. It is outrageous, in their opinion, that, certain kinds of crimes won't be investigated. They will just be recorded, maybe for statistical purposes, and simultaneously you're asking people to come forward and report them while knowing that this will probably not be investigated.
Yeah, I mean, the obvious take is, if they want to save resources, why not stop the non-crime hate incidents? That's an obvious, especially in Scotland, where they want to sort of spy on your dinner parties. I mean, if they stopped all that kind of nonsense, what do you think, Paul?
Well, I think a lot more of them if they did. This is classic SNP stuff. I mean, their optics are all over the place here. Why do they need to say it in the first place? If this doesn't help the police in any way, you're basically saying, in this particular geographical area in Scotland, we're not really going to do much investigation, just carry on nicking things out of people's gardens and damaging cars. If there's no CCTV evidence, we're probably just going to leave it. But essentially, in reality, that's not what's going to happen. We all understand that there probably aren't enough police out there. And what's really interesting here is Humza goes out of his way to say there are more police per capita in Scotland than there are in Scotland and Wales. And in the same breath, In England, what did I say?
Scotland and Wales.
Yeah, sorry, yeah, in England and Wales. And therefore, in the same breath, completely contradicting himself by saying, we're not going to do this because we think we don't have enough, we haven't got enough time to spend on it. It just, to me, I don't know who he thinks he's trying to win over. I mean, who thinks this is a good idea to say this stuff?
I know. Well, he has the incredibly easy task of only being better than Nicola Sturgeon, but he's still failing, which is quite impressive. And things struck me here that he says that recorded crime remains at one of the lowest levels in 42 years. Yeah, because you're going to stop recording it. You've just said.
It's brilliant.
Brilliant system. All right, let's do The Guardian. And tensions between WhatsApp and the government continue to escalate. It basically comes down to this. Would you want Ofcom reading your WhatsApp messages, Paul?
Definitely not, if that's a direct question. UK ministers seek to, as is in The Guardian, as you say, UK ministers seek to allay WhatsApp and Signal concerns in encryption row. So this is, the government say text scanning online safety bill would only occur if technically feasible after apps threaten to leave the country. So I would say technically feasible is not necessarily a good excuse. I should finish that. So, but on the surface, I understand it's very challenging because, you know, if you think you can prevent crime or if you think you can solve crime by looking at people's data, then on the surface it looks like a very good thing. But we want to be a happy, healthy, functioning democracy, and in doing so, you have to have that personal privilege of being able to protect your data. And if, at the end of the day, we know if you give an inch, they'll take a mile. So if at any point in time someone starts just, oh, we're just going to have a look at these messages, who knows where they're going to stop?
Yeah, my understanding, I could be wrong, is that they were saying that they don't actually have the relevant technology anyway, so it won't come up and they won't be subject to clause 122. But then the argument was the clause hasn't been updated in its wording, though, so they can potentially introduce an accredited technology notice at any time and then give the government giving itself essentially permission to spy on your messages. And WhatsApp have come out very strongly and said that it'll destroy privacy as we know it. But the argument, I suppose, Nicholas, is about safety. Whether you want the online safety bill and Ofcom in charge of that, I question. But what do you think?
I think this is a classic case of good intentions leading to the proverbial hell or heck. I don't want to say hell and alienate my American Christian fans, who will be watching this on YouTube. But it's bizarre, as you said, because the government has now said, yeah, when and if the technology will be available to only go after and detect, for example, child pornography, then it will be used. OK, but questions have been raised as to how this technology is going to materialize in the first place. And secondly, that controversial clause has not been updated anyway.
Yeah, OK. Well, let's have a look at the Times. And scientists have grown humanized kidneys in pigs. Life-saving breakthrough or hideous dystopia, Nicholas?
Well, I would go with the former.
Okay.
Let's put a positive spin on the news. In China, in Guangzhou Institutes of Biomedicine and Health, they have managed to go through this breakthrough. For the first time, they are developing kidneys inside surrogate pigs using human kidneys, which will potentially, in a decade, they have estimated, resolve the problem of transplant kidneys, which is one of the most sought-after organs. We know in UK, for example, we have over 5,000 people in the waiting list. So they have had encouraging results after 4 weeks. These kidneys, considering these 4 weeks, are manifesting, the functions and the shape of the human kidneys. They are 60% made of human cells, and it's good news. Let's go with that.
The only reason I threw that in about the dystopia is this stuff can go too far. Like, they're developing synthetic embryo-like structures now, and you think quite disturbing. Then again, if I was waiting for a kidney, which apparently 5,564 people are in the UK, probably including Lewis Schaefer, I might be. That's probably a bit over the line, isn't it? I'd probably be quite worried. What do you think, Paul?
No, it's difficult to argue this is a bad news story because I read this full story and the first thing I want to be is contrarian about it and say, well, 60% human. I don't know if I want a 40% pig kidney inside me. Because you know what? I'd take it if that was all that was available and it was going to save my life.
Or you're already 100% gammon.
Yeah, I am 100%. To be honest, I read this and thought, more gammon, yes, please. Do you remember we used to say terms like, we shouldn't play God? No one ever says that term anymore, do we? This is playing...
I say it at home.
Well, you do.
No one listens.
Perhaps some of our viewers do, but I just thought it was very interesting. No more do we talk of this term of playing God.
Yeah, so there is a concern about that. But it's a bit like Neuralink. It's like kind of terrifying in a way, but could also solve someone's blindness. So there you go. All right, let's do the I. And a nuclear chief claims the PM is investing in fusion in order to undo the damage from Brexit. Wouldn't be the first time I've seen someone go nuclear over Brexit, Paul.
Well, yes, exactly.
Nicholas laughed at that. That's the only good link I've written tonight. He got it.
Sorry, I was thinking
you were thinking about what you were going to say. You'll get it tonight. You'll get it at 5 a.m. on the repeat.
It will be a lot better then. So UK's £650 million fusion investment, an attempt to undo damage from Brexit, says nuclear chief, who I assume voted Remain, because there's no other reason for him to say it. Yes, we did leave, I think it was called, I did make a note of it. Yes. Euratom, which was essentially the group of the European nations working on this stuff. We automatically left that via Brexit, and now what we're doing is going on our own. Now, that is a good thing. If the Ukraine and Russia war has taught us anything, that power and energy sovereignty is very important to survival. There is a million... You can look... I mean, just look at Germany, look at France, look at... We've actually escaped a large amount of this stuff, but this, for me, is a way of positively taking back control, and that's what Brexit's aimed to do.
Yeah, very briefly, Nicholas, what do you think? Is it a good news story that's turned into a bad story because of Brexit? What do you think?
I think it's a good story. We can always rejoin Euratom because Euratom is something parallel to the EU. It's not exactly EU, although it has links to the EU. But here, the investment, as even the chief of UK Atomic Energy Authority mentions and acknowledges, it will be more efficiently spent because it remains inside the UK rather than being distributed through the Euratom mechanism.
OK. That's it for part 2, but coming up, why young people hate work, why diabetes causes depression, and why Carol Vorderman should stop tweeting. See you in a minute.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, it's Aidan McGibbon here from the Met Office with the GB News forecast. Another warm night to come overnight with elevated temperatures for the time of year. More hot sunshine to come then into Friday. Not for everyone. There is a fair amount of medium and high-level cloud around, and there are some showers drifting north across Scotland and Northern Ireland overnight. Most of the rain not reaching the ground. These are relatively high-base showers, but could see some flashes of lightning as that clears away. Then for most places it's dry with clear spells, some low cloud creeping into the east coast. But wherever you are, it's a warm night. A muggy feel, 18, 19, 20 Celsius in the south, mid to high teens in the north. And that sets us off for a warm start to Friday. Still some of that low cloud and mist around the east coast, but it tends to retreat during the morning to the immediate beaches. And there'll be some low cloud creeping around the southwestern coast as well, with the potential for some showers to turn up later here. Otherwise, for many, it's bright skies and another hot day. Mid to high 20s widely, 30 or 31 Celsius in the south and southeast. Then into Saturday, it's another warm start to the day. Plenty of sunshine from the word go, especially towards the east and the south. A change on the way, though, for the north and northwest. Northern and western Scotland see some showers and some cooler air later. That spreads across the northern half of the country on Sunday, clearing elsewhere on Monday.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton, for 2 hours packed full of unfiltered opinions, unique takes, and fiery debates. I guarantee you blockbuster guests and exclusive reporting with no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I think there is a culture of collusion, quite frankly.
And no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio, and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard. We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often they will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners. Let's get straight into it with The Telegraph. And young people are less likely to value work compared to older generations. That headline written by my dad, Nicholas.
Younger people less likely to value work than older generations. And this is something where British people in general have come after basically most nations involved in this survey. Only ahead of Russia and Canada. I must say, personally, as a right-wing comic, I value work a lot because I don't get a lot of it. So it comes, sporadically. But the idea is, yes, people were asked, how would you rate work against free time, against other values in your life? And the millennials have a new outlook compared to the boomers and the pre-war generation.
Yeah, I was disturbed by this. The UK was the least likely country to say work was very or rather important in their life, with 73% saying so, just behind Russia and Canada, as you say. What's happened to sport? Have we got complacent? Is it because we're more advanced and we're now obsessed with work-life balance? Is it the cost of living? Is it the economy? People lacking hope? Are their jobs boring? What's going on?
Well, we're sold a dream often on social media as well. You'll often hear people... What's interesting... You'll often hear... Let me finish the sentence again, for goodness sake, Paul. Absolutely. I'm having an argument myself, Nick. You'll often hear sort of people say that, you can achieve all these things, work-life balance, don't work, earn £1 million by the time you're 28 and take the rest of your life off. Easy peasy. You can do that if you've got an OnlyFans account, but my OnlyFans account doesn't make a lot of money, Nick. So what is interesting...
It's good, though. It's high-quality content.
It is very good stuff. I mean...
You need a little mug like Lewis Shaper, just pointing us to the address.
My OnlyFans. But this is up until early 40s. So Gen X, which is my generation, I'm 43, so I consider myself in my early 40s. I was born in 79. And now, I think people my age, I don't know how old you are, Nicholas.
Same age.
You look young.
And you're younger, but not too much younger, Nick.
Very young.
I don't think that... I think all of us are extremely hard-working. I value hard work above almost anything else because I know what rewards it brings.
Yes.
And, you can't have those rewards without the work.
Do you know what's ridiculous, though, Paul? Anything that becomes work can become a chore. Like, I've got my podcast now, and I love them. Sometimes I'm like, I've got to come in and host a TV show. It's like one of the most privileged positions ever. But sometimes I can dread I shouldn't really announce that on the actual TV show, should I? That I'm doing.
No, but it's an interesting insight because we're all doing things we enjoy to make money.
Yeah.
And that is a privilege.
That is a privilege. But the fact that the Philippines, Indonesia and Nigeria said 97% said work was very important shows why they're going to crush us in the future. Yeah. That's my concern in the macro picture. Anyway, let's look at the Mail. will. And depression is a direct cause of diabetes. So could listening to the Smiths actually mess up your insulin, Paul, is my question.
Yeah, I like the Smiths, actually. There's some humour within that depression. Depression is a direct cause of type 2 diabetes, research suggests. I mean, I love this research. It's always this type of research and study. I'm not sure it helps anyone, really. To be fair, I'm a bit worried I'm going to sort of sail into Lewis Schaefer waters here, because if he was here now, we would have at least a 15-minute diatribe about how this is true.
It'd be the end of the show.
It would be the end of the show.
That's why I'm so glad he's not here.
Exactly.
For so many reasons.
However, it seems obvious to me. I mean, we know that being overweight is inextricably linked to having type 2 diabetes, and also if you're overweight, you're much more likely to be depressed. So it's all part of the same Venn diagram, and all you really need to do to try to prevent some of it, because it's all about probabilities, is eat better and move more.
Yeah, some of it's explained by obesity, which comes from emotional eating, which is like, it's a vicious circle, but also there's the other argument that the people are depressed because they are dealing with diabetes, and I have a bit more sympathy for that if it's that way around. Well, I have sympathy either way around. What do you think, Nicola?
Yes, it was already known that depression leads to obesity, and also people who have obesity are very likely to show depression. But this time they have found some genetic factors which lead to both of them. So hopefully that will maybe give them a better understanding, and then it will help them with finding the cure.
But also worth remembering that, as Andrew Tate says, depression doesn't exist. So just wanted to get myself in trouble right at the end there for multiple reasons. Let's move on then and do The Guardian with a story about eye-watering vet bills. Now, I found this one eye-wateringly dull, but is that because I don't have a pet, Nicholas?
I don't either. I have 2 kids. Don't tell my wife I compare them to pets. But
she doesn't watch,
I didn't. Yeah, she's not watching. The thing is, there's this alarming trend of fewer and fewer private vet practices being available. They have basically shrunk to 45% of all practices in 2021, as opposed to 89% in 2013, almost halved. And this means when you have a lot of chain practices as opposed to independent practices, the prices would be presumably the same. People have fewer options to shop around to get and of course it's a very distressing time when your pet is ill. You have to rush your pet to the closest practice that you find.
Have people changed their attitudes towards pets? Because when I was younger, Paul, it was just, if your pet had a medical problem, you just sort of let it die. I'm sorry to be bleak, that's just how it was in North at that time. But now everyone loves their pets like their children, and they spend a huge amount of money on them. Yeah,
I'm new to the pet game, really. We never had pets growing up. We adopted a cat about 2 years ago from a neighbour who passed away, and I can understand, ever since that moment, ever since Wilson came into my life, Nick, I can understand why people feel so strongly about their pets. And perhaps it's time for a pet NHS, Nick. I mean, they say, and this is the most socialist thing I think we're going to hear on the show tonight, but perhaps there is time for a pet NHS, because pets do help a lot of people overcome a lot of problems that go back into the human NHS. So perhaps we need to find a way of... but you're absolutely right in saying...
let's just hope it's better run than the actual NHS.
That would be depressing, wouldn't it, if we all turned up at vets trying to get our work done.
Yeah, you'd have to go into the vet A&E to get seen. Let's just quickly do The Sun. And Britain's most embarrassing political activist, Carol Vorderman, is forced to retract claims against Greg Hands, Paul.
Yes, incredible this. Who would have thought? Carol Vorderman forced to retract corruption claims against Tory chairman Greg Hands. She had accused him of illegal corruption by supposedly doling out £26 million COVID contracts to his mate, in inverted commas. Now, he's taken legal action, and it's forced her to retract 22 tweets just today, I believe. And this story alone is why I've always believed or been a huge advocate for free speech, because we should let people talk. I want to hear what absolutely everybody has to say, and then it can be measured on its own merit, as this has been. She's obviously she's been pandered and validated for months and months on end, Carol Vorderman. She's been told, keep going, you're on the right side of history, you're doing the right thing, and all of a sudden she's come a cropper.
Yeah.
And this is why we need free speech, because you can see the bigotry for what it is.
Well, there's a line between free speech and defamation. So she's been obviously had a letter from Ms. Lister. One assumes she's tweeted a semi-apology at 5:40 a.m., then piled loads of other tweets after so no one sees it. That was what people were saying on Twitter, X as it's now called. But Nicholas, just briefly, I've always thought Carol Vorderman, it's the most cringe, easy position. Oh, you're against the Tories. Oh, do you mean like the vast majority of the country, a collapsing Tory government? If she was coming out and saying, hey, not sure what happened on 9/11, you might be like, oh, that's a bit edgy, edgy from Vorderman. She's taking the easiest political stance. What do you think?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, credit to Greg Hans, who gave her a chance to apologize, which she did not take because she didn't apologize. But this is the problem with Twitter. You are free to say whatever you want, but you also risk making a fool of yourself.
Absolutely, as she did there. That is it for part 3. But coming up in the final section, the mass killing that turned out to be something very different and the world's deadliest song. See you in 2 minutes.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train. Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners. Let's do the Telegraph. And Spain is under pressure to remove anti-Semitic terms from its dictionary. Sounds like the woke PC police gone mad, Nicholas.
I'm going to be careful with this one. Spain under pressure to remove greedy from its definition of Jews. We are all going to be careful because we don't want to burn our comedy careers or any other kind of career. But Spanish Language Authority, which has this Spanish Royal Academy dictionary. It is called Spanish Royal Academy, and they have this dictionary, which is very important, of course. They have a definition for Jew, which is essentially greedy or usurer. That's a definition. Now, I don't think that's the only. It is not the only definition. They have different definitions. Obviously, they mentioned Jew means person of Jewish faith or a native of Judea. But one of those 4 definitions is greedy or usurer. Now, this has, of course, caused an uproar. Now, I want to draw on my degree in humanities to make good use of it for once. It got me to GBNews, so I'm not ungrateful. But linguistics, some people say it must be descriptive or prescriptive. Here, I think a dictionary is essentially describing what this word, in one of those 4 meanings, is perceived or used by the Spanish speakers. It's not saying
it's not advocating it, or it's not advocating it. It's just saying how it might be derogatory used.
Exactly.
The idea, though, is it came from medieval and Renaissance terminology, and that it's obviously has no place now. What do you think, Paul?
I don't agree with Nicholas on this, on the sense that it just seems so unnecessary. Yes, technically, the use of the language is as described. You can't argue that. But there are things that there are words that we've used to describe other groups or other people before that I'm glad we don't anymore. So it's difficult for me to accept that this needs to be in there. There may be a cultural aspect or nuance that is passing me by, but I'm quite uncomfortable with it.
And by the way, you can mark the words as archaic or offensive, and dictionaries do, and even this dictionary does. And even if you go to Oxford University Dictionary, when I was learning English, a lot of words were marked as archaic or offensive. Of course, there are disparaging.
Most of what Paul says.
Yes.
But then the question is, okay, which version of the dictionary we are talking? Is it the abridged version? Is it for students? Is it for speakers of a second language who want to learn Spanish? It depends on the kind of dictionary we are talking about.
OK, well, that was a very sensible discussion of that. Let's move on and do the Times. And is it dangerous to manifest your dreams? I mean, I manifested my dream to be here doing this, but I also accidentally manifested Lewis Schaefer, Paul. You need to be very thorough with your manifestations.
Yes, I mean, I obviously manifested Lewis Schaefer as well as my unsuspecting television husband. Manifesting your dreams is more likely to leave you bankrupt. Now, of course, if you just believe that manifesting, dreaming, imagining, asking the universe for something is going to get it for you. Nothing at all will come without hard work. Absolutely nothing. It's all about application. You must have a positive mindset. You must have a goal. You must have a vision. You must pursue something. And, you know, there's nothing wrong with asking the universe for a bit of help. However, unless you apply that in some way, if you just sit still, you'll never move forward. You can sit still and dream as much as you like, but you won't achieve anything. And perhaps we've got I don't think we've got a generation of people. I think we've got people that have seen success come very quickly and easy to some, and they think that could be me too.
Yeah, you've got The Secret. Yeah, not Me Too, like the Me Too movement. But yeah, you've got like The Secret and these people appealing to the universe. They should be appealing to God, but whatever. But then they're so optimistic, they have things like mounting debt, and they're more likely to experience bankruptcy. 1 point higher on the manifestation scale, 1 percentage point higher, they were 40% more likely to experience bankruptcy. So it's about people being a bit deluded and silly. But to give the other side, it is important to visualise, especially for sports people. I was watching Eubank Jr., second Eubank mentioned, different Eubank now, Eubank Jr. versus Liam Smith the other night, and he lost the first fight unexpectedly, he got destroyed, and he said, you know what, I was so complacent in that fight, I didn't even visualise the victory. So sports people always visualise the victory. Well, not always, but it's a good idea. So he won the second one when he took it seriously and visualised. What do you think, Nicholas?
Well, I didn't manifest or visualise Josh Howe, but I had him twice in a row next to me, so, you know...
None of us did that.
But the thing is, manifestation or visualization has been all the rage since the 80s, 90s, NLP books, self-coaches. One of the huge books of reference, Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, and others, Tony Robbins. See it to believe it. They said believe it to see it. Okay, so the idea is, and there is some sense to it, because the idea is your subconscious cannot tell between the difference and reality. If you think you will win and if you think you will lose, you are right in both cases. We've all heard these slogans. And it makes you more resilient and gives you more self-confidence. It's all very well and good. The downside is when you underestimate the risks or the
and you
time
stick
frame,
all your money in
end
it.
up in debt and make dangerous investments.
And stick all your money in a dodgy crypto. Yeah, all right. We haven't got much more time on that one. Let's move on and do The Guardian. And police were called out to a mass killing that turned out to be just a yoga class. Easy mistake to make, Nicholas.
This is a funny class. Funny story. And, well, this happened in St. Leonard's in Lincolnshire. Pardon
Carry on.
It was not a mass killing.
No, that's the key point. Key point.
So basically, there's this periodic yoga class called Full Moon because it happens at night, and it is in this premise, I think a suggestive one, North Sea Observatory with big windows, and some passerby, well-intentioned one, has seen a big number of people lying on the ground motionless. Possibly a testament to the yoga master or guru, if that's the word.
Gave him a good workout.
And has called the police, and for once, the UK police have shown up.
They showed up for no reason. I mean, Paul, mass killing in Skegness, it always sounded unlikely.
It did sound unlikely. Just as well, like you say, it didn't happen in North East Scotland, otherwise they definitely wouldn't have turned up. What's remarkable about this to me is that they didn't take any of the basic steps that 99% of the population would have taken in this situation, like A, knocking on the window to see if everyone's OK, or, you know, making some inquiry of some kind. And what was the chances, by the way, of everybody getting killed and being found in exactly the same position that they were holding for 3 minutes?
All right, should we very quickly do The Star and the karaoke song that got 12 people killed for performing it? Is it called I Love Hitler or something, Paul?
It's not called I Love Hitler. We don't get to sing that very often, though, do we? World's deadliest karaoke song has seen 12 people killed for performing it. Now, I'm going to cut to the chase here. You're all wondering what it is. It's My Way by...
Sinatra.
Yeah, I was going to say Sid Vicious to try and be funny.
Right.
But
regrets I've had a few, including getting shot for singing this song.
Exactly. I mean, the idea that it's the song that gets people killed is it's the guns.
OK.
Largely.
Nicholas, in 5 seconds, anything on this? Literally 5 seconds.
Frank Sinatra has been, or his lyrics have been accused of toxic masculinity. I did it my way. I think it's a positive message.
OK, literally you had 5 seconds. Sorry, mate. That is it. That's the show. Let's have a quick look at Friday's front pages. So The Times, baby deaths cover-up investigated by the police. The Guardian have escape of terror suspects prompts prison cuts row. The Eye has fugitive terror suspects escape investigated as possible prison inside job. The Financial Times, pensions poised for fresh jump as triple lock matches wage growth. The Daily Mail, warring brothers still 100 miles apart. The Daily Star, Doddy didn't become a ghost, did he? And those were your very fast front pages. That is it for tonight's show. Thanks to Paul and Nicholas. We're back tomorrow at 11. And if you're watching at 5 a.m, then stay tuned for breakfast. But from now, it's good night, good morning, and God bless.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, it's Aidan McGibbon here from the Met Office with the GB News forecast. Another warm night to come overnight with elevated temperatures for the time of year. More hot sunshine to come then into Friday. Not for everyone. There is a fair amount of medium and high-level cloud around, and there are some showers drifting north across Scotland and Northern Ireland overnight. Most of the rain not reaching the ground. These are relatively high-base showers, but could see some flashes of lightning as that clears away. Then for most places it's dry with clear spells, some low cloud creeping into the east coast. But wherever you are, it's a warm night. A muggy feel, 18, 19, 20 Celsius in the south, mid to high teens in the north. And that sets us off for a warm start to Friday. Still some of that low cloud and mist around the east coast, but it tends to retreat during the morning to the immediate beaches. And there'll be some low cloud creeping around the southwestern coast as well, with the potential for some showers to turn up later here. Otherwise, for many, it's bright skies and another hot day. Mid to high 20s widely, 30 or 31 Celsius in the south and southeast. Then into Saturday, it's another warm start to the day. Plenty of sunshine from the word go, especially towards the east and the south. A change on the way, though, for the north and northwest. Northern and western Scotland see some showers and some cooler air later. That spreads across the northern half of the country on Sunday, clearing elsewhere on Monday.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel,
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.